Because Geshe Thabkhe, then the concert, that's a dog word. Gena chick sona consola pengine. Oh, consola consola gadi yabo yongi doom into that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thank you. This is good. And
that do song.
Hello.
Ko hago so.
ngaju delegen la. Yaputu. Okay.
Oh, bujung lep tesha. Kat legela. Estele.
Good morning, Gen Rinpoche. Thank you for these precious teachings on the precious Garland. And we're very fortunate to have Dr. Tenzin Buchung translating for us for the next 3 weeks in Katrina's absence. Tenzin is a Buddhist scholar and a Tibetan translator who earned his PhD in religious studies at Emory and is currently a postdoctoral research associate at Princeton. So we're very happy to have you with us, have you translating for us for the next 3 weeks. And you and Genla know each other. You've translated for him many times. So thank you for filling in for Katrina. And welcome to all our online participants. We're happy you can join us, and we'll begin with some prayers. The link for the prayers is in the chat box.
To the teacher endowed, transcendent destroyer, one that's gone, full destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one not to bliss nor the world's supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, to you, the Buddha endowed, transcendent destroyer, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paced 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, then I bow. With pure bodies, form supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain. Fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner the best, supreme guide, to you I bow. With the supreme signs, face like the spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not incomparable, wise one, to you I bow. Great, compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to the Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms. Unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom.
Recording in progress.
In the trainings, the holy field endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame on a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all seeing, subdue the four faults, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, foreland, sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you. May all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy gurus, in the space of your true body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam gururam mandalakam niryatayami. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, is the Dharma and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
Oh yeah. This one. Oh yeah, that's right. Oh, dear, love gender kumi song le sura. Chidar langbu trunsap kane tumba ishera. Chidar langbu trunsap tumba. Chidar langbu trunsap kane tumba ishe. Za lo kam gala ne yini chaju nes. Nyeba druba mebar, yang do longa dar. Soyan jik ten de banga te dan ras. Oh, di pecha ne songwa. Chidar langbu che she sigora. Ane be za. Yangsa jiksu runga chilia, tsamambura yabu jete sara. Ane ko tele chaane pandro ne sati saka dogo sa pandro ne tabshi chidi, yang la ma songdo de sara. Chida langbo, trumbasidu ma tom rinbu tindi siyara. Trunsep kane trumba tingo, tsamambu chiza ti sabu samdo ara. Ane tabshi chidi ko yangsa sonza rido rama, yang la songdo ra. Oya. Chida langbo, trunsep kane trumba ye tsalo kamgane. Kakasha saya du samche kontra. Yini chajune, tele chane. Zalo kamgangale yini chajune. Diko saga pandu de nyeba druba za saya mara che ya de saji chite mayang la londo de sera. Nyeba druba meba se kote ramu mara za saya mara re. Nyeba druba meba. Yang du londo be ting sabu yang ma londo ra. O di pecha ra, di na shese. 소연 직된 된데와 대단한 가라조 직된이다 미 겨울라니치 소화 체에다 된데 전달이야 답시를 전에 신디 대화 중세 직 전달이야 근데 미게벨레 나서라 바체바 이나시거라 근데 텔레테니 저치마 양상에 송리야 홍도 띵서분에 송라론데 동에 마부 연구래시 얘네는 유의정부 고도 그래서 어디인데서 섭섭체체 그와 양도야 말롱아 시에 된다랴 하다 미께와 바르마체바 야부치 토비야다 디땡리야 있는 건도 녀리게 탑주네 그와 건도 탑지게 주 건도 주주주시야 나도 미기 주보 주점신에 되라 주주주라서 같은 소리 아불로네 겨와 정말 하다 미 텐드 겨와 바체 그 마체바 톱네 아니 디땡리야 가서래 다 내래 코알레 타르바자 마이바 내손레 타르바자 마이바 말 내손기 동에레 타바자 마이바 코알레 땐도 타르와 동해 용매 그와시 제고 삼라 전에 가서래 대답이 공부 토벌 제발이야 아니 저도 교바던 공부로도 비송배 오마데 제청아 답을 된도 더비나리아 아니 먼저 당엘에 토베 교송여봐 어때줄래 토바체 삼바체 림지 장네 탑비 심제 탐제게 된 네바 요소 잡고 내 심제 탐제를 배 통계게 가사시 유라 제고선 교육고세 연대 군대지 가사시 유라 잡고 대체도 아니 오마름지 정말이야 토바다 삼배 공배를 주바차 오냠도 최년배 군우 Yeah.
So, Chandra Gomin explains the samsaric situation with an example, where he says that just like an elephant for a mouthful of grass goes near a cliff or precipice with sort of attachment to some mouthful of grass, and then falls into the well or into the precipice. Similarly, and in this sort of example, the elephant eventually doesn't really get to eat the grass, like his source of attachment, but kind of falls into the well. So similar to that is our kind of situation within samsara, where for some samsaric pleasure, including for our livelihood, we engage in a lot of negative karma to kind of earn a livelihood and to seek samsaric pleasure. We engage in a lot of negative karma, thinking that that is going to give us some sort of ultimate well-being or satisfaction. But the reality is, what happens is that due to negative karma, one falls into the precipice of lower realms, including that of hell beings and animals and so forth. And so that is the kind of the situation within samsara if we are not careful. And so in order to avoid that, we should, instead of having kind of attachment to fleeting samsaric pleasure, we should seek rebirth in higher realms continuously, on the ground of which we can then slowly spiritually develop, so that we can ultimately achieve the state of nirvana, state of liberation itself. So the way to do this is therefore to engage in what is called the 16 wholesome actions that give rise to higher rebirth, which kind of basically is included within what we call as the 10 virtuous actions, refraining from the 10 negative actions, that is. And so through these observance of karmic actions that give rise to higher rebirths, and then we can continuously build our spiritual progress of development, so that we can eventually achieve the state of liberation itself. So therefore, the goal of a spiritual journey, therefore, is the attainment of higher rebirths, on the ground of which we attain the ultimate state of liberation. So therefore, the way to do this is to rely on authentic teachings and authentic texts, such as this particular text by Nagarjuna, that is the Jewel Garland. And so this is the sort of, and so therefore, by studying, reflecting, and meditating through studying, through reflecting, and through meditation on the content of this particular text, I'm going to seek the state of complete enlightenment for all sentient beings. So that's the sort of motivation that with which we should approach this particular class or listening to this particular text.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, 당연히 데 something 들려요 봐. 숨주 소드인데 봐요. 다 숨주 소드데 계속도 잡스테 양자. 야셰제 문에 전에 야셰제 친사르데 롭츠질라고도. 다이네 디차잔 랍든 빼마 보고도. 이제 계속 친사르데 되래. 오 가르스라. 숨주 소드데 봐. 솔로가. 람숨 통다 의메 봐세트. 어디 랍츠잖아. 람숨 통다 의메 봐. 코에 쟁구로 게메예세. 쟁고다보 펜진지 주전되는 거를 요르세. 람숨 세치도와 어디 가르치고서나 에네 녀모베 땡진데 버리 좋았다. 녀모베 땡데스네 되라. 녀모베체로 네 레체 겨왔음 부들스 거라 람숨 세테. 녀모체 레체 네 겨와라이 시거라 람숨세 통다 의메 바세 다데 땅복 가르레 니바 가르 숨바 가르세 근데 지에요 말을 시거라 통메 말을 바세도 땅복 임베 깨지려 과거주 다시 겨한테 찍을 자네로 통메 말을 보는데 데이터리아 겨와절라는 말을 바디 용거라 데이터를 겨와요 사레샤라 데이터리아네 가르요 사레야 말을 바다 레사야다 대치되고 우림 대 가르소래. 뭐 지버르진 디 당보른 디 니버른 디 타마드레세. 코 코르체 대제 코 코르체 대베네 띵은 제 개요 말아. 약간 독배 탑시 전에 타마 요시거라. 통마 매제 타마시. 어디인데 람송 통다 의미 봐. 타직도 통만 대리 의 대리. 요 네 타마든 대리 세제. 나도 탄다 코코나 시테나 뜻이에요 말이셔라. 코에 긴고데 가서 게메 콜나시 도스 코라나시 때 땅부카레 니바카레 숨부카레 세치요 말아 직실리 직퇴 직실치대 어디나시 레소나 긴고르 또부 펜준지 교신이 도스도 토메 마리 바게 니반도 지 레레 켄시그레 레데게 교와 톱그레 교와랑 바데 야 토메 마리 반 직대 기그레 야 레사그레 레사 바데 야 교와랑 그레 교와랑도 야 당신 끼그래 제가 거기에 찌개 좋아지지 찌개 퇴제요 그래서 그 타체도 내 땅보를 내 타마 좋아해서 이제 셔에 매부터 그래서 거라 편준이 교신해서도 내내 코안 줘서 코 kursu도 왔지래서 거라 근데 도매 말이 받은 기본도 제기 내셔네 깨와로 봐 내가 내 타체도 내밖에요 말이 찌개 퇴 도체 때도는 내 타체도 땅보들에 내 타마들에서 요 말아 단 배조 지게네 그 토마다 요 말데 토마데 매서야 돼 용거라 당 아주 단도 나시 때다 그 토마다 바르다 타마치에 매게르스 거도 야 어디지 랍지네 코를 주디 쉐거라 근데 양라 종일에서 버틴데 코네 쉐야지니 개바 쉐거라 단다 되다 코 kursu 텐데레 쉐거라 어야 뜻이라나
So we are going to sort of revise the last verse very briefly. That is verse number 36, which basically briefly summarizes the way in which we are propelled endlessly within samsara, within circular existence. And the verse says that samsara, or the process of samsara, basically can be included within the root ignorance, which is basically afflicted emotion of primordial ignorance, of grasping to a notion of a false self. And then that kind of leads to karmic actions or volitional actions. And then that gives rise to kind of conditioned rebirth within samsara. So these three phases, or these three kind of aspects of samsara, they cause each other, mutually cause each other in such a way that this mandala, or this circle of samsara, it says without any end, without any beginning, without any middle, and without any end. And the reason why this is it is said is because if you take, for example, rebirth or birth within existence or coming into existence, this is not the beginning because it was caused by karmic actions. Karmic actions in turn is not the beginning. It is caused by afflicted emotions. And then when you talk about afflicted emotions, that is also not the beginning, because for there to be afflicted emotions, we have to have a rebirth or existence within samsara. And that in turn is caused by karma actions and so on and so forth. So therefore, this circle, this mandala or this circle of samsara is likened to a kind of whirling torch of fire, such that, there is no beginning, no end, or no middle. But even though there is no beginning, through our own spiritual effort, through our spiritual practice, we can put an end to samsara. So therefore, the verse 36 is basically setting up, sort of by summarizing the condition existing within samsara, by briefly describing the process of samsara.
야 다 담다 되게 과 그저 빼고네 과 고단한테 셔서 난 이번에 코알은 독배는 버리 셔도 안 되고 마셔고 가지 과 간데스 독배는 버리 셔도 대가래서는 대내 랑셴이가 다 두숨니도 마톱치르스 아니 만진반에 세바는 이거 대내 레다 깨와 양아시도 대내 랑셴이가 다스는 땡진 레버리 주에 응고본도 주시고 알아 고용 거 보도 땡진 잡을 좀 거 보도 되네스 라셴이가다 달에 랑원에 두배 껴와요나 컨디스키도 달에 끼그래 셴에 끼그래 니걸에 끼그래 규밀에 끼그래서 근데 제바치네 고 라그마도 근데 랑레 랑다 당이 집에 줄에 껴와 말해서 당이 셴고 타데베 줄에 껴와 말해서 랑원에 두배서 오라 라셴이가다 니걸에 껴와 말해서 어디디 교매발에 지금 말도 근데 다시 해줘요. 주섬니도 말이야. 대배 두나야 랑원의 주배 껴 교요 말에 랑원의 주배 따다요 말에 대부 마음 받게 돼. 랑원의 주배 쓰기 두섬도야 랑원의 주배 껴와다. 죄송하고 요 말에서 대배 두라요 말에 따다요 마음 벌요 말에서 주섬니도 주섬니도 마톱체서 랑원의 주배 껴 마톱을 말에서 했더라. 마치 버려서 껴요 이래. 다다 현대 니가 다 경미다. 주섬 예동아 쟤는 니예요 말해서 라문데 줘야 말. 주섬 예동아 마톱시 토베요 말해서. 만지반에 세버 조르세. 오라리 티바치라메야 마도메다.
Yes. So then, verse number 37 briefly summarizes the process of the reversal of samsara. How do you actually get out of samsara, or how do you reverse the process of the conditioned existence within samsara? And here the verse says, I'm going to read it first, but the process of cyclic existence, the process of dependent origination within samsara, is not attained from itself, from something else, or from both. No, it is attained in the three times. So therefore, it is basically talking about the lack of inherent existence, or kind of there is no inherent existence or birth with regard to birth, with regard to after the emotions, with regard to karma, and so forth. And that is by basically analyzing whether they originate in terms of inherently originating in terms of from itself, inherently originating in terms from other, that is totally unrelated kind of other entity, or do they arise from both, or do they arise from no cause whatsoever, right? So if you analyze in terms of these four corners to see whether there is true existence or intrinsic existence, then we don't find it. We are not able to find, not that there is no existence per se, but there is no true inherent existence with regard to effort emotions, with regard to birth itself, and with regard to karma actions as well. And that also applies if you try to look for it in terms of three times. Does a truly existent birth, for example, exist in the past? No, it doesn't. Nor does it exist in the present, nor will it exist in the future. And so that is to basically point to the lack of inherent existence or true existence.
Yeah. Utandi tirechiro nima kagalia tudemambuyora. Tina nepena transamba china. Nobo karena kona kyu tangi tu yore sigora kyu tango chiboshi kyu kapsu yoyore sigora. Te yo debate ne su kyu ta tangi chiboshi kyu tu su yore sigora kyu tu su meben tribuke yomare sigora. Te de ko kyu ta tangi chiboshi yore. Te perusilia koya tenyo gore se tale kiwase dera. Tende yo mare se kyu tu sun debu yo mara nangbochena. Ani ya rangwene trube shenji kyu de rangwa du trube kyu chiche, debu de rangwa du trube chiche, tende ke yo mare se nigale ke yo mare tichani she yo ra. Tichero. Ani tu deba tan tada da mangobe kadu ina rangwene trube suji kewa de yo mara. Tiko rangwene kewa yo na. Ani tsene kane kikdo se chik zugu sari ji kuyo ra. Rangwene truba, rangshingi truba, taksu tu truba, chesu tu truba se ra. Rangwa tu truba se tu chikba ra ming mangbu yo ra. 어딘데 얘는 코나 랑하게 수트 용이나 가기대신 디레스 지제네 건주고 조사시 네 주고라 들어 딱든 제네 네 요바시거라 디라기요 말에 디 매자니 랑원에 매래 나란주 통주 들어 랑원에 여버다고 템바 통고르데 통하나싱아주 통주 템바 말에 쓰고라 로 디 랑원에 요 말에세 야 어디 티치 랍티잖아
Yes. So this particular kind of analysis partly comes because of the prevalent non-Buddhist kind of philosophical schools position with regard to inherent existence or true existence. For example, the Sankhya. The Sankhya actually explains that there is intrinsic existence, and things exist during the time of the cause. At the causal level, the resultant actually exists, uh, uh, but not in its manifest form, but it's a non-manifest form. The cause and the effect, or the cause of the result, are simultaneously existent. So therefore, from that point of view, they say that there is intrinsic existence because it arises from itself. So therefore, the first part of this reasoning by Nagarjuna is to refute such existence, that during the time of cause, there is no effect or result, right? And secondly, what is explained here is that it is also not the case that there is an inherently existent cause and then there is an inherently existent effect. So if they are inherently existent, then one cannot actually impact the other by definition. So therefore, things do not exist from inherently existing other entity or other cause as well. And so if these are refuted, then the caution of some arising from both is also refuted, and also the idea that things exist without any cause is also refuted. So from these four, based on these refutation of the four possibilities of inherent existence or inherent birth, the notion of inherent existence is refuted, which kind of contradicts our kind of interdependent appearance or phenomenal appearance to the mind, right? Kind of the phenomenal appearance due to the interdependence is such that we think that a particular cause gives rise to an effect, right? But if you really analyze, if an inherently existing cause is giving rise to an inherently existing effect, not just through a kind of a conceptual interpretation, but if it is truly the case, then we should be able to kind of directly observe the causal process, and then be able to point out, say, this particular aspect in the cause, right, transforms into the effect, right, or the cause transforms into the effect at this particular time. And that is the kind of thing that we cannot do. And so therefore, when we engage in rigorous observation and analysis, we don't really find true existence in that sense.
뭐야 어디인데 돈다 공하라서 나무잡으리 통구도 신가리서 돈다를 sul게 오네 누구 거나고네 주 나가랑 튕기유세 그렇지 나라서 삼구도 진도다 나가랑 그 누구 삼구도 나가랑 그 삼구도 마도 현달을 뜻인 데네 시부체제네 된들 때는 들어와서 딱바참 삼으로 지금도 디네 심무부터 깨운데 코나편에 코나 주토요 베스를 나와셔기도 제 건조선에 어디 레세 코나 교도스 여여래 코나 주야 코나 주토요 거래서 거라 말아 전에 코나 대해요 말에 땡지 레버는 저 땡데 소르데 지 소르데 니 제레도 해지 줘라 땡지 레버는 좀 하셔야 돼 맞다 어제 인도 가서라 랑신지 교와 매버래서 거라 땡데 랑신이가 다 두숨이도 마톱쳐서 랑신지 교와요나 교와도 쟤네 지 데레샤스 지 쟤르지 거기에 거를 뛰어 말아 근데 랑원에 주베 동바디 콘도 추소나 세고라 동반이 똑발로 때네 아니 ngārzi 세도 그래 세고라 너 니가서 교화매라 랑신기 교화매세 예 랑신기 교화매바데 콘도 추네 양내 양도 공발로 때네 아니 지다가 섬상가 랑군에 예 손정어보지네 교화이네 교화 랑군에 예서 직바지네 랑군에 직송 섬상 로 진데더니 당진다 랑군에 주번 집에 로드파 내가 차그러 동버도네 곰곰발이다네 그 동반이 세대 대하고 그라 동바세 제 자체부터가 니마게 문바서라나시 당보 강가 파세드시 오마라 તે યાને યાદો કોમ યાને યાદો કોમ તે થોમા મેબને રાંગને ટ્રુબા nganga rang yese sosol chana nganga rang yese rumche yede tipa tende yodan yulu de chani medoa tende re medoa sum yane yando komne ane pajo de neba churu chene baru chilya nganji de pa doye re ma to chi kashi tongbani sidu jiha ko re ta namsanchi mero chaya re samu koge do tende mara o tende rangshe kashi nganji bane seban ju tene nganji se sona ngao nyambe lode nga rangwa du tuba rangwa ne tuba de se sona ane tene chakdang ki wange le saya di yo mara je nga sa rangwa di mena ane ngaye se di yo mara shukshibul ane ngaye se chakba yu chi da tela neba che sona ane tangwa di yo gwara o tezo me di wange me chakdang mena di wange le saya di yo mara kiwa da mi kiwa le saya di yo mara 대왕게 미게레 사소는 예솔게 차당게 차베 왕게 케벨레 사소는 겐돌하다 밀레게 티치와라 티엔데 코에 겨와테 센도 레송다 난지 반에 세번 주르스 티세스나 티네 레다 겨와야 네 레사도 사야 요 말에 이번 두지 레사도 사야 요 말에 나 점상 숙침부면에 차당이요 차당면에 대왕의 차당이 생활도 손에 깨와다 매겨 레사야 되어 말아 레요 말 대면에 깨와디 사바요 해요 말아 나를 사창게 레도 저 인간지데 세서나 근데 그 세바데 세도 거라 착바데 착바 세사 수능에만 사창게 레 여나야 대sol에 개바 세바다 구발 nem바가 서담게 누가야 새로 당게 되어 말해 사베데 마서 사kam베날 사베 여바나 시레서라 추디메나 코 사베 여나 게토고 말와 어디나 시치도 간지 세서나 레사도 사야데 요 말에 사 심발이야 되네 누가 세바게 누가 새로 따야 돼요 말때 되네 코알이 껴와서도 그래 송도 되네 레다 껴와야 세바 주시 어디 잖아
So, so therefore, there's a fundamental difference between how things instinctively appear to us and how things truly are. And that is to say that, when you actually look at a field, for example, kind of it appears to us as if there are inherently existing kind of crops growing in the field, and we just assume that therefore there are actually truly existing seed, and those seed kind of gives rise to these crops, right? So there is a kind of a conceptual overlay here. There's a kind of things appear to us as if there is kind of a truly existing cause giving rise to truly existing effect. And based on that kind of phenomenal appearance, we also conceptually kind of reify that appearance as, yeah, that is actually the case, right? And so that is something due to conditioned habit. We have all this kind of phenomenological experience, so to speak. And that also appears to our own kind of sense of self. We think when we walk from one point to the other, we think, oh, I am walking by myself, right? When that kind of the process of walking actually involves a lot of factors, which is not the self. So therefore, in the conventionally, so to speak, in the domain of interdependently arising conventionality, things do appear as if, inherently existing cause gives rise to inherently existing effect, right? But so this particular verse is like, if that is the case, then there are four possibilities. Either it should inherently exist from other, or it should inherently exist from itself, or it should inherently exist from both, or it should inherently exist from neither, right? So then we refute one by one. So therefore, we refute the possibility of inherently existing from any of these four possibilities. And then we also refute that kind of inherent existence in terms of time, right? Time frame. If truly exists, it should truly exist in any of the three times, in the past, in the present, and the future. Or we also refute them one by one. So the Samkhya philosophy kind of, in order to actually posit the idea of inherent existence, they say that, the cause inherently exists, the effect or the result inherently exists within the cause simultaneously. So that is why this is sort of significant, like as a in a non-manifest manner. So therefore, things truly exist. Therefore, there is inherent existence, right? And also, then we should also sort of realize that, when understanding emptiness and kind of experiencing this freedom within, it's not just like sunlight, kind of illuminating darkness immediately. Immediately when there is sunlight, darkness is eliminated, right? Understanding emptiness wisdom is not like that, we may eventually gain a glimpse of what emptiness means, but because of our habitual conditioning for countless lifetime is so heavy that we may not feel the impact right away, right? So the kind of phenomenological self-grasping lingers, even though we are actually through logic and reason eliminate the kind of ontological self-grasping or notion of a true self. The kind of the experiential, phenomenological kind of self-grasping lingers. So that's why we have to engage in studying, reflecting, meditation again and again, and eventually, we are able to actually experience the benefit of this kind of wisdom training. And so eventually, through the threefold method of studying, reflecting, and meditation, we are able to eliminate self-grasping. Then what happens is, because of lack of self-grasping, we are able to actually eliminate aversion and craving, right? Craving is always with regard to oneself and what we consider as mine or belonging to mine, my family, my friends, and so forth, right? So when there is no craving and aversion, then we do not engage in karma. Karma is literally propelled by the dual force of craving and aversion. Craving and aversion, due to craving and aversion, we either engage in wholesome actions or we engage in unwholesome actions. If we engage in wholesome actions, those actions give rise to higher rebirth, even though it is within conditioned cycle existence. If we engage in unwholesome actions or negative actions, then it gives rise to sort of rebirth within like lower realms and suffering and so forth, right? So therefore, once we are able to eliminate self-grasping, and through that we are able to eliminate craving and aversion, then we are able to actually put an end to the process of conditioned existence or within samsara. Not only do we actually no longer accumulate new karma, but also all the latent karmic imprints or potentiality also are unable to give rise to fresh kind of existence within samsara. And the reason is that even though one may still have countless number of karmic imprints, as soon as there is no craving and aversion, there is no force to activate those kind of karmic imprints or karmic potentiality. It is likened to like a seed thrown on a dry kind of land or something like that, with that without any kind of moisture and so forth, and kind of supporting kind of conditions, that even though the seed is still potent, it will never give rise to its effect, right? So similarly, with the elimination of self-grasping and with elimination of craving and aversion, we are able to basically bring an end to conditioned existence within samsara.
Oh yeah. And they show look on the quality over but then you got some something the subject need the quality over but the shake door. You show look at some subject but the door. The direct junde jawata shi door. The direct junde jawata. The da seba ni tong ne se. Yang da ni tong ji den la. Yue me ni do me sim so se. Oh, the dar koe junde de shi wara. Koe judan de bu de zo se. Jawata. Right. Teta seba ni tones, tomba ni tosuna, kowe kudan dreba teta rangune drube kewata teta meba tosuna ne teta rimge tome marba ni bandu kanga sendo ate, kwa pandu ate so seba ni tones, yangda ni don jigden la, yeme ni don mesim so se, o tene tomba ni tenje dreba jong ate so, ane rangune tomba she suna, 양다 니도 지내라서 양다바 니도 매바 양다바 tantabam tembatruba rangwene truba 매바 세고라 양다 니도 지내라 예바 ata 매니 메심소스 양다바 예바 심게 요 말에 따와네 매바에 심게 말에서 다 딱제게 타니데 트베 위티 또도고라 오 데카르 땡제 데바르 주양 뭐 못해서 삼아시고라 아니 동반이야 또서나 ne yang da ban ye to mere ina tension de meba ba de meba de meba ma de tension de ba ju ye chu ji kyulen de bu che wa ta phen de ya de yong ge wa de rawa do tre be chu ji che wa ta ga ba ta kari cha wa chen ge de yo ma de ina ko chu dan de bu ge tension de ba ju ye chu ji phen de ya ta cha wa che de yo de se de che ba ma de se tak ba ya ma de tak ba sto rang ne yo na Joa maybe tabore chakuara, teacher tabas mingtawara, tata cheta sidwa. Cheta said, could never chaya telesigora. That's all the meba mare, cheba mare, se. Rangune to Bangajo Tona, I think, Rawan to Chen to you, thank you. Takwata being more to take it up with Tunsu Tina share your mares. Tajak Tanya that you to shake to attend that Tombani Tosunanity, 100 days. Yeah, what did they?
So verse number 38 continues on this topic of how to reverse the process of conditioned samsaric existence. And I'm going to read it here. Seeing in this fashion the arising of effect from cause, and also seeing its cessation, the wise thing, the world is ultimately neither existent nor non-existence. So therefore, from the ultimate point of view, or inherently speaking, there is no kind of birth of an effect from a particular cause. The whole notion of kind of the causality within samsara cannot be entertained when we think in terms of ultimate or inherent existence. And so seeing this lack of inherent existence with regard to cause and effect within samsara, we can actually see the cessation or ending of samsara itself. So therefore, from the point of view of ultimate reality, we cannot say that things or samsaric process inherently exist nor can we say that it does not um, inherently exist. So it is neither inherently existent nor non-existent. But at the same time, we should sort of understand that this doesn't really point to, therefore, a kind of a nihilistic position. That even though the other side of saying that things do not inherently exist, that phenomena within samsara inherently exist, is to point to the understanding that they do exist conventionally, or they exist based on many causes and conditions, or dependently they exist. So which is to say that, with this sort of wisdom, we are able to gain freedom from both kind of nihilism and eternalism.
나 단대다 가지고 동해 탐제 세바이 최대 töne 또메바 그러와 미지 내려 당와다 용수 메시지 짜고 세대래 뭐야 뒤가시고라서나 뒤때에도 가시고라서 동이 또배 배에도 시고도 동이 또배 배에도 시고라 근데에서는 동해 탐제 세바이 세도 뭐 강시 또나서 동반이 또 선시고라 된다 denji drepari juwe chiyo teta tongpanyi tokso nase, kashi to nase, chigore. Tunghe tamze seba yese, tunghe tamze sebe, penye chenji denji drepari chungwa, drupata trawa te, tong nase gora. Tunghe tamze seba ye, chiyo de, tene, tome ba, chiyo de tene gore. Tunghe tamze sebar chebe, penye chenji, denji drepari juwe chiyo, rangwene drupa tata trawa te ese gora. töneese. Lumbu tongpanyi tonglia tokchu tsuishin tu che me shingi lumbu tetsu kanga dragi wade sera. Chende töne to me pa tongpanyi lia tokchu tsuishin tu che me shibe kansa tetsu ki minchikbe ne, kebe minchikbe ne rangwene trube tongpa telia lumbu tetsu dragi wade sera. Minchik ne la tangwa chidane rangwene trube tongpa ina drigi maris tongpo chinge ta trubda maa kachiri sira. Ngui maa tuzu kanga rangwene truba yinsi gyora. Ine tsujo uma ba rangwene mea sidi kotili tangpo rachiacha. O rangwene mea na de yungu maris kanga chiri bata nangpa ki ngui maa kanga tsuba chigora. Tangpo chinge kachiri minchik bene tongpa nyi rangwene tongpa sayatili minchik bene re shara. Ti jik bene maa re shara. Ngone jikpa sengengi ne dire sora. Miji ne la tangwa ta. Yina tila tangpo cho, o rango ne mena, nga zo tongwa na shi tenpa mena. Yene kage yo mara, le yo mara, devu yo mara, shina ki kachere, cheda lo do de sora. Miji ne la tangwa ta, wangso me shi chi chawo. Tongpa nyi ne zu di yabu ma shen sa chawo yo re sir, jiki yo re sir. O ta rango ne mena, ne kaya me do asam, taa me do, taagi me do. Ne kudan trebun jawa tuzu tegi maare samche tragi ware sora. Yonsu mishibe cheri tragos. Kingu ne chene tragba ne maare keba chene tragba mebe ne jugu ware. Tragba de kane nguru se nga sudu nga rawa wadabchi chik tsuktu ware chi yona shagu wara. Ti yona shadu ene tiri chi mandrite o tindri maare san tragi wara. Ti mewe ene tragba mewe re shagu wara. Ngune se tragba shive kyure de. Yine kodo tragwa jewe kyole toge ware sigara. O te yinde, tichi kyushana, nosu mishe chi trago osaya.
Yes. So then we come to verse number 39, which kind of demonstrates or explains the benefit of understanding the wisdom of emptiness, but also kind of explains why the realist who actually cling to a notion of the intrinsically existence kind of may give rise to fear with regard to this particular wisdom, even though it is not a source of fear. Due to their own ignorance, it may give rise to fear. Because for them to say that things do not inherently exist at all seems to convey the message that, therefore nothing exists, whatever, myself doesn't exist, mind doesn't exist, and therefore the kind of world of causality does not exist, and therefore it is a nihilistic conclusion, and therefore it gives rise to fear within them, right? So therefore it says, but really the reality is that this wisdom of emptiness is not actually a cause for fear. For the wise, it is actually the ending of suffering within samsara. So therefore it says, having listened to this dharma that puts an end to dukkha or suffering, right? So this is for those who actually understand the implications of the wisdom of emptiness. Yet the undiscerning, afraid of the fearless state, right? The wisdom of emptiness is not actually a fearful state, it is a fearless state. But the undiscerning, those who do not understand this, referring to the realist, all the kind of lower schools of philosophy, so to speak, are terrified because they do not understand this particular point. So therefore, the undiscerning are afraid of a state that is fearless, and that kind of fearless state gives rise to fear because of the lack of understanding.
Oh yeah. This well.
No, Gela.
Oh yeah, what is? Tanga to derida. Nyangen de la dida ku mebar kyu na kyu mijise. Dine mebar sheba la kyu ne chidi jigbar shese. Oh, dan di shegdo ka shegur sena. Oh, ane. Tarbe rangshin di shebe kendi dina. Ya, dan di tarbe rangshin sheba shese. Nyangen de la dida ku mebar kyu na kyu mijise. Dine mebar sheba la kyu ne chidi jigbar shese. Dan di chitra maa da tezogia. Karsere nga zu tarba menebe nyade topsona mami shiwa njuwa shi kana lushin dushin ka sowa tamze trewar kyu dushin nyawar shiwar kyu namba shiwa nobar kyu saya shiwara nyade tingi tuzu kele gyawara pumbu lama mewe nyangale deba se de mami shiwa na shingi ti kanka mewe chadu ure shegwara ati shegwara da yang tanda uma baga cho tamze rangwani yaw mare rangshingi yaw mare tembar yaw mare shedu zang o ti mena ani nga mendo nga yewa mendo dada dage mendo le dan rebu kanga meba chagre keda shena ge ya jigba ge ya shire se ti cheda re se lakyara ti kerang ti shetu pumbu lama meba nyamen li debe topsona ani mami shiwan juwa se kana lushi kanga mesik dwas oma ba tada cho tamze rangani yo mare se de tarba topsona ani nganzin se dugure tangzin di se dugure se de Kariseni shigewara se tati gewara shita gewara. Nyangen dagalan dida ku mebar kyuba kyu miji se. Pumbu lama miwa nyangelen daba negam na ane nga da nga zeta pumbu ta tuzu kanga seba delia kira shigme duwa se kira keling duwa se gwara. Nyangen dala kyu miji se. Dine mebar sheba la kyu ni chidar jibaya. Dikabsi cho tamze rangshin ki yuwa maare se tongpa nyi re se. Ani tarwa tokso na tongni tokso na nga da nga yuwa tuzu kanga rangune meba togu yuwa re se de. O tene jikpa chenpu re she na ki ya re te. Nga tanda me, maungpa na me. Ani nga yi pungpu tanda me, maungpa kiwa chima duwa me na. Ten jikpa kiwa ne re se. O te karche ni jikpa chi yuwa re se ura. O ten de karso re. Nyende tinir sigwara. Pumbul keranzu pumbul lama miwe nyangele deba toba tese. Ane kezo tada dagida pumbu da kanga mena. Jikwa jik me toa sti shek toa se. Minche nasara. Ane kam deriya chotamze rangune tongbare rangune chuban zimbe zimbate se sona. Ane ngarzin sebare pumbu tuzu kanga sebare koya pumbu kanga sebare se tala. Karzen jigwara sera. Pumbu lame je nega na meba sheba la chidi jikpa de tongni le chakwa mere te tongpa nye le kena chakwa ma re se 어디 있어? 다 돈다 내 참말 땡해고라. 대체 대반을 좋아해서 준대리양이 신예버데 당분에 개천부터 쓰송아. 주단 대부 겨와도 대대 팬에 접어도 되게 와라. 자고 땡전 대반을 좋아해서 이 팬에 접어도 요래 저 증게지 요래서 와라. 이나 랑원에 요 말해서 돼. 기대 엄마가 개천부 시에라. 땡전 대반을 좋아. 땡데데 백 개천부 시에라. rangi tawa tenla paya le tente te kese mbore, shenji lodong dokwa le tente te kese mborwa, yudeng ki cheba bo yone da, ta takwa yone da, kari yona, tenche drebar juwe to ne, ngobo kora, chudan kien le tene chawa cheta ti to ne ko, paka gyora, ranglu shaya de ti to ne ko, duche kora, ngobo kora ngoye ne su chawa cheta cha ne, tenche drebar juwe chawa cheta di shaa ku yora, o ti chi lo niya.
So then we come to verse number 40. And this verse number 40 is mainly for the two, what we call as like the Hinayana schools, or the two schools, or two kind of lower schools, where what is kind of sort of mentioned here is they generate sort of fear by when like the Prasangika Madhyamika kind of maintains that everything within samsara, such as kind of cause and birth and so forth, do not inherently exist at all. For them it amounts to saying that therefore that this particular position is a nihilistic position, and therefore it gives rise to some sort of fear. And so what is kind of being to refute their claim, or to kind of give to really bring home the idea that this is not actually valid. You're saying that this particular text is saying that you're not afraid about the claim that all this will not exist in nirvana. And so this basically points to their the kind of the idea of nirvana without remainder, without any remainder of aggregates, as posited by the two lower schools, some of them at least, where the kind of the claim is that or the position is that when you achieve nirvana without any kind of remainder of the psychophysical aggregates, then it is like a lamp kind of being extinguished. Nothing remains after that, right? The self comes to an end, the aggregates comes to an end, sensations come to an end, even perception, all of that comes to an end, right? And so therefore, if you, on the one hand, you say that in nirvana, all of these come to an end, right? Including self, including the aggregates, including sensations. But on the other hand, while you are actually able to live with this fact that everything ends in samsara, in nirvana without any remainder, how can you not actually then accept here when we say that things do not inherently exist, right? Why then are you afraid when told that here the threefold process of samsara does not exist or does not inherently exist? So therefore, what we have to keep in mind is that when the Madhyamika discusses about emptiness or lack of inherent existence, but on the other hand, they are simultaneously kind of saying that things do not exist because of dependent origination, right? And so therefore, even though things do not inherently exist, yet at the same time, simultaneously, one should be able to point that causality is still valid, that the notion of karmic causality, cause giving rise to effect, in terms of dependent origination is still valid. That it is in fact because of dependent origination or the logic of dependent origination that we can point to the lack of inherent existence or emptiness. So therefore, when we are able to kind of maintain such a view, so this view of dependent origination is very important, very significant, not only to basically maintain one's own position that even though nothing exists whatsoever, ultimately things are empty of inherent existence, but nonetheless, interdependently or conventionally, things exist because of dependent origination. So this particular uh, logic or view of dependent originations are not only important for establishing or reaffirming one's own view of the middle way, but it is also very significant for refuting the views of proponents that kind of maintain intrinsic existence, such as there being a kind of truly existing self or atma, or the notion of a intrinsically truly existing creator God, and so forth.
Oh yeah, what did it all consider? Tala Tame Pumbu May said, Tarba Topsum Tame Pumbu Yomare said it. Oh, down there, Chitama to the this you are how many to be said. Tala Tame Pumbu May get the Tarba Tendran Buse. Tarba said, Tarba Pumbu Rama Yang de Tobatese, and it Kage Pumbu Ganga Severa. Mamisho and Jewish seven necessary insera. Tala Tami Pumbu make at the Taba Tender Dose. Tada Pumbu Savala, any Kirko Chimegase. And it take under Tombani Tone and Tombani Tone touching in a castle, Taba Tubuza, Tada Tagin the Balas of a Kanga said to the saddle. Can a Karjan make a chivior esse? Yanditing to the left, the cover regrese, the Shagdwa. Dada Pumbu Sawalas, and this said the Posal in Baode Yungdo. Dada Pumbu de Sawa Meba to the Swara. Dini Chugo, young Detobati Siswara. Dini Chugo Chim Mekase. Karjan Mekares. Tande Chidama in it in the Shagre. Umabaina. Tarbatoba Sarjan Lengi Pumbu Yomarwa. Sarjan Lengi Pumbu Yomar Mother, the Pumbu Meva Chagmarwa. Da Meva Chagmarwa. 당진 매버 차고 다 매버 차고 말해. 사실 년년기 풍부 매마도 풍부 요라 다 균책 말와. 대양 가가 치고도 되지랍니야.
So this is basically verse number 41 is continuation of this particular discussion or dialogue with the two schools belonging to the hearers, the Vipassana and the Sautrantika school of philosophy, who sort of kind of maintain this particular position, where he says, in liberation there is another self, no aggregates. In your liberation, in your notion of liberation, right? And if you're intent upon that kind of liberation, why aren't you pleased with the teaching that refute self and aggregates here as well? So certain proponents of Vipassana and Sautrantika school, this is basically still in reference to them, where they say that the nirvana kind of basically is an ending of both self and aggregates, right? It is like the extinguishing of a lamp, right? In nirvana, both self and aggregates comes to an extension, right? So if you are kind of able to maintain this within the state of nirvana, then why you are not able to actually maintain, or why you are kind of afraid when we say that the three process of samsara does not inherently exist. But actually, in fact, what we have to sort of understand the kind of irony of this is that from the Madhyamika point of view, it is not the case that aggregates and self actually come to an end in nirvana. What comes to an end in nirvana is what we call as contaminated aggregates and contaminated self, or conditioned aggregates and conditioned self. That comes to an end, right? The self does not come to an end actually. Self-grasping or notion of a truly self, that comes to an end, right? So the uncontaminated aggregates and self actually continues into nirvana according to the Madhyamika school.
Oh yeah. Don't get it to Akasha. Yang deba ngobo mesi, yang deba ngomeba ota desigorta. Chitra mahata tazosena. Pumbu kagba de tar pumbu kagba. Pumbu da kanga sendo tsura. Kagba de ni ngobo yeno shenas. Da shida sheya medu pumbu kagba de yan tarba de ngobo temba truba chi yin sam gewara. Tine jigidu chi do sam gewara. Oh, chini kaisare. Yang deba ngomeba oti sula kudwa karla gwasna. Pumbu kakbe tarba tingi ngobo yeno senase. Battle palen javyara. Chita mawala vetulia. O nyange deba ngomeba anse. O minase. Ngobo kalese. Nyangele deba te. Ngobo meba yena chale ane. Temba tuba ta. O tinte yungu marisi wara. Yang deba ngomeba ha. Yena se ngome yena. Temba tuba tele cha yungu marisi wara. Temba tuna ngobo tozo temba tuya nyanga yor mata. Ngobo meba tozo ta pa. Le pa ta pa sa mata yikwane sutuye meba te le lagir ba chitane. O tinte. Ngobo kala yinsi wara. Pana nyangele deba ranshingi tuba ngobo kala yede ma yinsi. Di kare se na. Ngobo meba ranshingi yoba de teg marisi wara. Ye zawa shirab long chan shigdwa. Kete tongmi chungse yo, tongba chungse yo ba jose. Wa, kete tongmi chungse, tongba chungse yo ba jose. Ne, metong chungse yo me na tongba yo ba kala jose. Metong be che tozo ngobo tozo tamba tuba me na. Tongba nyete tamba tuba tele ja kawa yung gresi gora. Ngobo meba ta tongba nye serab tozo ko mebe charisi gora. O ti tanda tarwa te ngobo yin, tamba tuba yin samna, o ti digma rese. Ya, chichilamna digdwa.
So then the next line, verse number 41, verse number 42 is basically in response to a hypothetical response provided by the lower schools, and that is to say that we can posit such a nirvana where everything ends and still maintain that it is not a nihilistic position and therefore not a source of fear, because the ending of everything, the state of nirvana, where is the cessation of everything, the state where everything is is a state or comes to an end, is itself a thing, is itself an entity, right? And so therefore, the nirvana itself is inherently truly existing entity. Although everything ends in it, but itself, the ending itself is a thing, right? That is the claim. That is their kind of counter argument, right? And so therefore, to this hypothetical argument, then here Nagarjuna responds by saying that nirvana is not even a non-thing. So how could it be a thing, right? So we said that nirvana is actually the ending of everything. So therefore it is not even a non-thing, right? And so if it is not a non-thing, how could a non-thing be a thing? So that is the kind of argument here. And so therefore, the it is the kind of the commentary here cites Nagarjuna's root verses of the middle, where it says that if those that are not empty does not inherently exist, how can you claim that that which is empty actually inherently exists? So that's basically the response to the hypothetical hypothetical response raised by the lower schools. So now, okay, thanks, sir.
어디 어떤 나 단디 가서도서나 뭐다 뭐고 매진바 세바냥에 대시 자세 어디 가서도서나 뭐보다 뭐 매바라 신지 주바지바 세바들냐 대시 그래서 전다 냥 대세를 가르시 그래서나 뭐보이나다 뭐보 매베나 최강이나 예 라문에 주바 라신지 주바지베 지바데 세서나 냐뭐 거에 짜와데 세로라 거에 짜와 세서도 나 삼상 나 라와 주반지베 세로 디세나 네 삼상게 신자제사게 유디메 차라 신자제사게 유디메나 차바메나 공도도 용도요 말아 대자 세다 티무송가데 세로라 근데 telea tarwasi 그래서 거라 니까자 뭐다 뭐 매진바 세바냥에 대시 자어세 용어보다 뭐 매바랑 신지 주반지 세서나 아니 냥대 토버레스 타브라 토버레스 가르스나 코아코에게 그 짜와드 세르와 나 섬장 안전디 숙치부터 매나 아니 나이때 용거 말아 나이때 매나 딱촌지에도 용거 말아 나를 거거를 지으때 다 지금 매고에다 진짜 시대가 말아 나를 거거때 매나 아니 차바 매서다 때려 당화되 용거 말아 콘도사이드 용거 말아 오팅에다 내 삼나시 제마소 삼사 이 당화되 용거 말아 팀에도는 도차 시당 지수 매나 디무숨데 매나 대왕이 레사야요 말아 개월에다 미개월에 가야 사야요 말아 니모공하게 레사소나 미개월에서나 아니냐와 이다 전도체 개월에서나 나다 밀기고와 오티인데 디세바들에 양한데 봤어 데 두다모 신다잖아 타바스도 농바를 치는 도사에 베서도 인데 셰요라 농바 맨다를 실레면 타르부터 그러세 다팅아 죽가서라 남바잖아 타바 토세야 돼 신다케면 녀모세서나 녀모 빠서나 라르메게 외치겠다 녀모 자원에 게메게 차서나 타바 토라 내가 콘도당하게 매버데 차요라 산대무시 콘치르바토도 코껴셔지 있다네 술다도 가가 껴셔지 있다도 내가 그러니까 차고 매버를 차요라 지대베도 장아라도 데베 네 르롱절을 차고도 가가 내가 매버도 치르발을 차야도 껴셔지 있다도 내 신자도 매네 내가 매버 차도라 내 상대 당부세 더 기기도 와 다들 시험하고 싶어 다들 싫어도 돼서
So then the second part of this particular verse number 42 is basically Nagarjuna explaining what nirvana really is or truly is, right? So he says nirvana is said to be the cessation of the notions or the cessation of grasping of things and non-things. So basically the cessation of grasping to the notion of truly existing things, or and as well as the cessation of the grasping of grasping to inherently existing non-things, just as they said nirvana is a truly existing non-thing, right? And so that is basically what nirvana is. Nirvana is a kind of subjective cessation of notion of truly existing entity. And the reason why that is nirvana is because if the grasping to notion of inherent existence comes to an end, that is basically, it also means grasping to a truly existing notion of self, and truly notion of the phenomenal world as well. Then there is no attachment, to a notion of I and mine. And when there is no craving or attachment, there is also no aversion, because aversion arises when the source of one's craving is denied, right? So when there is no craving, there is no aversion. So in that sense, craving and aversion in turn arises from the primordial ignorance of grasping to intrinsically existent things, self and the phenomenal world. So when ignorance, craving, and aversion comes to an end, then there is no more accumulation of fresh karma, and there is no more activation of latent karma, and therefore conditioned existence or rebirth or existence comes to an end. And that is what nirvana is. Nirvana is therefore a state of mind. So therefore, if on the other hand, grasping to a notion of intrinsically existing self and phenomenal world does not come to an end, then karma kind of is activated. We accumulate fresh karma due to craving and aversion, and if it can it can lead to both like wholesome actions, which in turn gives rise to higher rebirth within samsara, or it can give rise to unwholesome actions, which give rise to rebirth within lower realms and so forth. So therefore, that is to say that nirvana is therefore, from the point of view of Nagarjuna, nirvana is basically a state of mind. And that is also a kind of refutation of other ideas of liberation or nirvana that is prevalent during the time. Some people even think that nirvana is actually a kind of a different realm or different country that you travel to, right? That is not the case. Nirvana is a state of mind. When all afflictive emotions are eliminated without ever returning back, right? Irreversibly terminated, then that is basically nirvana. Of course, like we can temporarily eliminate degrees of negative emotion, but that is not nirvana. But when all negative emotions are terminated or eliminated irreversibly, that is nirvana. Temporarily, we can eliminate them, we can suppress them. For example, there are practitioners who actually see sensory pleasure as source of suffering, and then they engage in deep meditation, samadhi, giving rise to like the first concentration level, second concentration level, and so forth, where the state is such that they have no attachment to even like subtle, temporarily in that kind of meditative state, subtle sources of pleasure and so forth. And so therefore, at that stage, one is able to temporarily suppress or eliminate craving and aversion, and therefore it is a temporary state of cessation. But once the force of meditation is it comes to an end, then once again, due to one's own conditioning, past conditioning, one also one gives rise to a notion of truly existing self and phenomenal world, and then the chain of samsara kind of starts again.
오야 다양 되시기 바라 양해를 대봐야 정신이 매서나다 가와되어서 내 매버 따와라 때버 요로서 다 제다르서 양대 매서나네 터바 매서나 되네 Kake Medua Seta. It goes some written this year with I. Pa cherish, Nanga cherish, and echo Rashin Yogure, some Gora. Tombany, Tembatuba, you say, Yogudua. Ikares, chick the Yoko Jirisa. Rangone Tomba, Rangone Tomba Koran Thompson, and Rangone Yoga, so the record said. The Kosanje in a chug, Nelus, the Kosanje in a Tombany in a Kanga Chikba Yugura. Shokuranga Mosha, Nasha, to down to the Sigara. Yele ako tharba ta nge so ta lekpa ta tuka cheba kayo mara. Ko cha trebulya kewa ta me kewa sani trebulya chi lengi yo ayo armata. Shio kora ngo shaya taliya ko cheba yo ayo kayo mara. Ta ta ti samgyo re, sulab gyo ra. Tharba te ne ramu ne me sana ta ne cheta re se gora. Arwa. Nyangale dabaya na shiji me sana. Ne mebar tawala temba chanta yorgire sana. Tini cheba shekto lokta seyate, meta am lokta ta yangdakbe tawa niki cheba ti sebo chenti, lokta renti yangdakbe tawa resi, cheba cheche shektoa. Ote, ti karesna. Dona mebar tawa ni leji debu me cheba, suna maye nge sonwa, tini lokbar ta shiya. Lokta sana dili sikiri da sikiri. Dona dorsu tuna, mebar tawa ni leji debu me cheba, meta seyate, le kyo sa nedra, mege wa sa nedra, drebu tewa ta tungye yoya yo ma re se. O te lamna ta te karsare me cheba tawa re tu gyo ra. Dona me bar tawa ni le je drebu me cheba, suna mayi nge sonwa, te suna mayi be le re se. Nge son do cheche ki chu tu gyo re se. Le kyo chana te drebu tewa ke yo ma re, tsendele tewa ta chimala, tewa yoya yo ma re, le mege wa chana tsende ta chimala, tungye yoye ke yo ma re se na, o ti lokta re se ra. Dona me bar tawa ni le jin rebu me che ba te, suna mayi be le re se, te nge son le ke che kyu re, te la lokbar tawa se re se ora. Te la lokbar tawa se re se. O ti chi lam ne, di ra. Yeah.
So then verse number 43 is kind of a hypothetical opponent or one's own camp that if there is no nirvana, then it amounts to nihilism, right? We entertain the idea that, but something must exist, right? Like even it maybe the ordinary phenomenal world does not exist, but maybe the highest of the phenomenon, phenomena, so to speak, must exist. Nirvana must exist, right? Emptiness must truly exist. So we sort of instinctively give rise to such kind of doubt, right? But surely emptiness must exist. That's the ultimate truth. Surely, nirvana must exist. Nirvana must exist because that is what we aim for, and so forth. So therefore, this verse is in response to that. That when we talk about the mode of reality, the ultimate mode of reality of all phenomena, it applies to every phenomenon from all the phenomenon within samsara all the way to like the nirvana and all the enlightened qualities. From the point of view of ultimate reality, they do not inherently exist. But if, on the other hand, if you think that because things do not inherently exist, such as nirvana does not inherently exist, therefore, there is no causality, therefore there is no such thing as meritorious actions giving rise to happiness, non-meritorious actions giving rise to suffering, therefore the whole notion of causality collapses. That is a wrong view. So this is basically defining what is a wrong view and what is a correct view. And so verse number 43 is, in brief, a nihilistic view is the belief that karma has no effect. It is non-meritorious and leads to lower rebirth. It is said to be a false view.
Oh yeah. Tatanda ko, le chunde, kiti le le tani drebu titu yoye me se te ko, le chundela ne kudibre sigora. Kitu susuna mai bele sigure kolo debut karim gure ngeson le dugres dishason. Aden dojo desera. Yanda betawa diskaril sigresena. Dona yebar tawa ni legend debu yecheba. Sonam tendro jutemba yanda tawa sheshe dose. Oh, yebar tawa ni se. Dikar sigresena. Legend debu yecheba. Le kewa chena debu tewa yongure. Le migewa chena. Ane sende da kewa chima niga le tunghe yongure se. Oh, tilia. Dona yebar tawa ni legend debu yecheba se. Sunam tendro so te kyu nego so sunam je le sigres tanda. Kyu kewa chana debu tewa yongure, kyu miki wa chana debu tunghe yongure se te. O te tawa te yo na, te tabu tawa te la ya sunam je le sigres se. Sunam je le. Te kyu tu so sunam je le se. Ani ko chima maa bana kare tendro lada mele kewe kyu chi yo re se wara. Sunam se. Tendro kyu tenba as. Yangda tawa se te, yangda be tawa se re. Jikdenbe yangda be tawa se re. Tongba ni tawa te mara. Jikdenbe yangda be tawa se te, nga zu nangba kangal kuya ra. Wale kewa chana, sente ta chimalia, tunghe yungure. Le me kewa chana, sente ta chimalia, ane ka sura. Tunghe yungure kewa chana, sente ta chimala, tewa yungure se. O te tawa te tere. Jikdenbe yangda be tawa se. Nga ra zu sangmal kuya ra. Me kewa chute, tikwe lere tela tene nge son la dugres tikhe lengora kiwa chudu sana lada mele tigres le dewa la tene le kewa la tene debu dewa ta le mege wa tene debu tunge yong tawa de nangba kangal kuora ten chikten yang ta be tawa chikten le debe tongba ni tawa mare te o te chinan ta tanda lokta seti dile sigre yang ta be tawa sen dile sigre teni kaga res tiri ya o tene.
So then verse number 44 is basically now explaining what is what is a right view. So having explained what is an incorrect or wrong view, now what entails right view? So basically, if you maintain that nothing exists whatsoever, that's a wrong view. But if you say that things exist in a relative sense, in a conventional sense, then that is right view. So therefore it says, in brief, a realistic view is to believe that karma has an effect. And it is meritorious and leads to higher rebirths or higher realms. It is said that it is a right view. So therefore, if you maintain that causality is still valid despite the fact that they don't inherently exist, if you maintain that meritorious actions give rise to happiness within conventional kind of world, and non-meritorious or unwholesome actions give rise to suffering, then that is basically the right view. The right view, not in terms of the transcendental, not in the sense of transcendental sense, but in the worldly sense, in the world of conventions, in the world of conventionality, in the dependence, causality still is valid. And this sort of view of causality within the world of conventions is something that all Buddhist schools must maintain, right? Like, therefore we engage in observance of karma and so forth. And it's based on this particular view, the right view within the kind of worldly conventional sense, and not in the transcendental sense of inherent existence.
Oh yeah. Tatanda ko le kewa chena debu tewa yungure mege wa chena debu tunge yungure sede yanda beta wa dan lo beta wa chije shede o te ya karsura 렌데 여바타와티야 타니에 잠도 연기세 렌데 레 기티레 데부티도 용하데 여세데 타니에도 여시고 마도 랑신기 주바 여시고 마다시고라 렌데 여체바데 타니에 잠도 연기세 지네지 타니에 잠도 연기세 랑신기 주바네 마히노세 랑신기 주바 수지 렌데 준데 여바이나 아니 한테 따따챤도 주라 다다버타와 랑원에 주바 따와시네 딱딱을 놓고 거라 딱딱다 체다스 타니데 계셔보지 거라 딱딱을 라운에 들어갔다 있네 딱딱 놓고 거라 라운에 매서 매버려서 땅도네 체달을 놓고 거라 체버스 매버들 거도 거라 야 어디 질렀나
So, so when Nagarjuna asserted that causality is still valid, what is meant is that causality is valid within the domain of mere conventionality. In the world of interdependence, in the world of conventionality, mere conventionality, causality is valid. That wholesome actions give rise to happiness, and wholesome actions give rise to suffering, and that is something that is valid within the world of conventionality. But it does. We have to keep in mind that it doesn't mean that conventionally, this kind of notion of notion of causality, and is not true with respect to from the point of view of ultimate reality, in the sense that they therefore inherently exist, right? Cause inherently exists, effect inherently exists. If you maintain such a causality, then you fall within the extreme of eternalism, right? So the middle way philosophy is that we have to kind of maintain a view where we don't fall into both of these extremes, the extreme of nihilism on the one hand and the extreme of eternalism.
Oh yeah, what this one?
No,
This one?
this again, no.
Oh yeah. Tana do tire da kasira. Oh, tire da tire. Tana lende yeberta kan tanya samdo ni rashin tu me tire bashara. Oh, tene ina. Ta tedar ta rashin tu na ta tire bashara. Ta pumbu lame je negam na. Tenzin logwa ma se pumbu lhagse je negam na tenzin me te sigdwa. Oh, de lhagse lame ti chi lagko kirya. Pumbu lhagse se de lhagse trazun basira. Nyomo pansar che. Tanda ko midra chi ina ko mi lui ti te orwa. Tongpa ni ngu sumdu to ya kom ne. Tangchin se chana. Chadang nyomo ke meba chana. Di lhagse trazun basira. Nyama leda nyomo ba wanga sabe pumbu lama te tanda te orwa. Shiwa marwa. Siya ko te juji nyomo seba de la lhagse nya desigira. Kansa de la lhagse trazun basigora. 공부 라마 단다 동해 덴베 라마 레 라데 요레 다티 메나니 마오바나 요해 요마라 고에 껴와 요해 요마 동해 덴베 요해 요마라 자 학제스리 하메스데 공부 조사서나 세텔을 녀모 반사르셰 아니 시소나 아니 공부 라마 메바레 다 공부 라마 동해 덴베 라마 시오레 티에 메바샤레 다 마오바나 고에 껴와라 요마레 일루세스 라이어와 류 메바다 페텐도 메바 쳐고 말와 레녀 정한게 라와 메바 끼치 제고 바 풍분 돈에 제고 바 때 메바 차도라 일루세르 실라체 티체라 어디 줄라나 야
So not only that, for those without, for arhats without remainder, in that kind of, in their nirvana, everything kind of comes to an end. But we also have to kind of talk about arhats with remainder. And arhats with remainder basically means remaining, who has the remainder of the current psychophysical aggregates, a practitioner who has achieved the state of arhathood in this very lifetime, who is still alive, but who still maintains the psychophysical aggregates that is propelled by conditioned existence from previous lifetimes, right? So this particular, such a person, such an individual who has gained liberation in their state of mind, but nonetheless has the remaining psychophysical aggregates, contaminated psychophysical aggregate propelled by karma of the previous lifetime, is referred to as kind of arhat with remainder.
This one.
Oh.
Oh, yeah, that did it down. I don't know, I did it down. Oh, I think it was a large genegam naya. Made a shit. Pungulame genegam na things to send your mother said. Pungulaja negos of things say what trash of the Sarako. Yomo Panzani, trash of Basiora. And the Koya Pumbu to tell you, Zani, like a trash of Bas, did you saw? That is your God losena. Oh, did it that. Sheba made a yes, she said. Take down Sunam led ever. Taking Andrew Tendula. Then a tower at Ambassia said today. Oh, did it? Take our cigarette. Oh, Sheba made a yes, she said. Nelu Jutalia. Sheba made a Yoba Tower, she was serious. And he came, Mickey le, take down Sunam led ever. What is that is your? Sheba made a yes, she take down Sunam led their boss. Sheba made a yes, Nelu Jitan Sheba, Sheba, Sigara, Nelu Jitan Sheba, Meta, Meta, Yota Shivish. Nelu Jitan Tombani de Aboshan Sona, Tension de Bergen, Chen Dinam, Ramwin Tomba de Shan Sona, and it take tiny the travel de Shan to this, Meta de Dodo, Cheta de Dodo, this Gora. Sheba. 동반이 되는데 야구신 소나세 매다 예시스 매바 체다데 신두래 예바랑원에 들어가 예바타와 대신두래 딱저기 탄이다 대내 시와전에 우마트 도우야래서라 딕당 순남 랜데바세 와 딕당 순남 랜데바세 미기베 레 딕바다스라 순남제레 데 겨시거라 순남 리도 미케벨레 티과셰 티과타 소남제레 개와터스고라 대에네 녜송다 미케벨레 되게 녜송을 끼그래 개벨레 되게 텐돌을 끼그래 있어라 티단 소남 레데바 네 제에 녜도 텐돌라 소남제레다 소남마이벨레 니 되게 치데 텐돌 치데 녜돌 끼그래세 Tiene, no, ya dices, que me guile tibada, sunam le deba shi, que ni soda, tendo le cansa tene, tarbara, kawa tambe sheto. Utanda, me que va chuti pa, ta dir ka chena, tendo, ta dire. Me que va chuti pa, que va chuti tume ko, tendo la tamile kigra. 미케 와치오 외쳐는 예송이 끼그라 어디 손다 tel야 니까지 거랬으나 견도다 대 타르바라 텔레 타르바다 예송레 타르바시와라 케메게레 티볼렌 데바티 예송레 타네 텐돌레 끼그레세 간사테네 타르바르세네 타르바레 담베셰도스 사이체기 겁나 텐세 타다 세배 똑지 양식 치면 좀 줘래 교와세바 니타버티라 다티 가스래 네 미케와 주디 아버지 빠서나 네 속에 동해를 타네 타다 밀레 타르바데스오라 드네 동반이 또네 너무 빠서나 네 양해를 대바토라 타르바 니레 토그레스 어디 셰도스 드네 타르바 담베 셰스 기부탄바 산지 좀 되게 시야샤 동료를 시야던더라. 야, 이리도.
So, verse number 45, earlier, Nagarjuna explains how arhats without remainder have extinguished all kind of grasping to intrinsic existence. And now Nagarjuna is kind of saying here that even arhats with remainder, that is the remainder of psychophysical aggregates propelled by the previous karma, they also have terminated or extinguished all grasping to intrinsic reality, including kind of notion of personal self and phenomenal world. So through knowledge, one subdues or one pacifies the notions of existence and non-existence. So through knowledge, through knowledge or through knowledge of realizing the ultimate reality, an arhat with remainder pacifies clinging to a notion of intrinsically real existence, as well as intrinsically real non-existence, right? Both of these so therefore is free, that is to say, is free from both extremes of eternalism and nihilism. That is to say that such an arhat has achieved or realized the middle way. And so therefore, because of this state, such an arhat is free from both meritorious and unmeritorious actions, non-meritorious actions, and so therefore has transcended both negativity and merit. And because of that, such an arhat as basically free from taking rebirth in both higher realms and lower realms, within both higher realms and lower realms. Because as Geshe mentioned earlier, meritorious, non-meritorious actions give rise to rebirth within lower realms. Meritorious actions give rise to rebirth within higher realms. So even though through observance of such an ethics, which is important, and so therefore the ethics within the World Convention is still very important to give rise to higher rebirths and so forth. But if we engage in wholesome actions with clinging to intrinsic reality, it still binds us within samsara. And that is to say that one does not achieve the state of liberation. And so therefore, an arhat with remainder is also free from both wholesome and unwholesome actions propelled by clinging to intrinsic reality, and therefore is also free from taking rebirth in high and lower realms in the future, because the karmic actions, whether they are positive or negative, that is propelled by clinging to intrinsic reality is absent, and also craving and aversion that activates previous karma is also absent, and therefore that such a person is also liberated from taking rebirth in higher and lower rebirths, and the wise have said so, right? So this is basically that not only those who arhats without remainder have extinguished their clinging to intrinsic reality, but in fact arhats with remainder have also extinguished their clinging to intrinsic reality.
Oh yeah. 난 데리다가자. 네 뭐 군대 유명지 타다 잡아시기도 와. 교단 대분이 부터네 강원에 여바 말에 대다 잡아래. 또는 매바 말에 대다 잡아래. 쉐바 털었지. 또 떡달었지. 탕에다 잡아래. 군대 타니데 저한테 시도와 디간데 시도스네 개와 주당 제통에서 뭐 간데지 그 이나야 그 개와데 주당 개절 때는 기가 여버데 무슨 통계가 가져 치료지 뭐 붙이시나 저서 보이는다 소소 나게 간사서 보이는다고 주당 개절 때는 그 기고도마다 규미 때문에 왜 매버도 하고 되어라 제가 개와 주당 제통에 매번 일은 되어요 우마바시거라 고 우마바수 네 매번 마을에 대바이 있어라 매담마 말에 체담마 많이 있어라 매번에 대바이 인데 가르스네 뭐 컨디션에 고 깨고래 깨나 주당 깨를 때네 깨와데 통구도 와서 그래 디케는 게 와라 처음에 통구 와라 깨와 주당 제통에 매번 일은 대바이 있어 매담 체벌 따와래 대바이 있어 체다 송요 말에서 그래 goba juda che tongwe meba ni to ke meles o tenia nyamu goba lia nyamu goba na jin da ta jila so ba nyamu to goye chu lamje tembate shegi warese na se nga ra nga rang ge yu samba nga rang ge yu sam sa che te chin del ne pa thanye ta ko sam samro chik mo do o te de samba de Telia nga sa nga rangaranga yosa rawa chulu yosa batelia ki gauchi ki kyu yore se wara gauchi kyu karasa nga rawa mebate nga tenchen debar juwa yeba nga pumbu nga la tenne takwa yeba rawa mato pumbu nga sete nga ranzu namgyu samba nashi lo lagi na nga rangi yo dinge pobu re di sobu re dinge sembre sere pe soso de rawa chi yoba samlu kogudo o te yo ma re si gora karesna nga rawa jembate gochi gi kyu nga rawa meba to ke lamden de khele ge res lamje temba sha to res rangwe tong bate o te khele ge res goba kyu da che to res tang jin yo mo de da to jembate gochi ge kyu ne lamje temba ta me to ba rawa ta meba to ke yo bate khele ge res seme tong ge res shin ge res ora goba juda che tongwe yoba nido kemele rangwene yoba nido kemele rangwene yoba yotale longumare chedale longumare junde kele ya te ko tangi da treve junde sha to kure sigara o te jula
So then, verse number 46 explains that the middle way proponents can maintain a position where causality, that is cause and effect, a kind of a causal theory that is basically free from both notions of existence and non-existence, therefore free from both the true extremes of eternalism and nihilism. And so therefore, seeing that production has a cause, one transcends the notion of non-existence. So right, so therefore, with regard to causality, first, in a conventional world, we actually see, kind of the appearance of cause giving rise to an effect. And because we see that in the conventional world, Madhyamikas are actually free from, and maintain that, they are free from clinging to a notion of non-existence, right? Therefore, which is kind of a nihilistic position. And secondly, seeing that cessation has a cause, one does not accept the notion of existence. So seeing that cessation has a cause is seeing also that the cessation of clinging to a notion of inherent existence. This clinging to a notion of inherent existence, clinging to a notion of inherent afflictive emotions and so forth, they also see the cessation of cause of these clinging to notions of intrinsic existence through uh, the the noble path, right, of the Four Noble Truths, the noble truth of the path, and that is through understanding dependent origination, that the idea of a self, even though intuitively, phenomenologically, it seems like it's real, but we through understanding dependent origination, we see that it is actually the notion of self is actually conceptually imputed based on many bases of designation, none of which is the self. And so therefore, seeing this, the noble truth of the path, we see the cessation of all of these afflictive emotions and so forth. And because of seeing that, therefore, we maintain seeing that cessation has a cause, one does not accept the notion of existence. Here, existence is kind of in the sense of intrinsic existence, right? And so therefore, a Madhyamika is a proponent of a philosophy that is able to therefore avoid or transcend both of these two extremes, extreme of existence and non-existence, or extreme of eternalism and nihilism.
Rangshinji trube kyume sura, tando kyume to sade rangshinji trube, tando trube kyume to sura, tando kyume to, tanda rangshinji trube kyume to. Karesne kyusen tamade, ngari keba da, drebu ngari kebe kyuta, drebu da henji do kebe kyu kaya, ene rangwene trube yo mare sura, kyume se. Tanda drebu le ngari kebe kyuta, Debuda nyamdo kebada, tende kaya rangwene trube kyuyo mare sora. Ta ngar keba tadi ngar keba ta henchi ke se kyume se rangwene trube kyu mare sora. Te sonta tendo rangwene trube kyume to ose. Ane ta yanda nyeto na kya rabdu trashiro se. Tokbe takba ta raba. Yanda ba nyeto na kya Tireta, do Tomatic Coaser. Rashinji Trube, Rashinji Trube Kawan, Rashinji Trube Kawate Tada, Yanda Vanyitu, Tanyabet Samakanga Truba, Tayanda Latene Trugimares, Tanyabet Samake, Rashinji Trube Kuta, or Tende Dondamatuba, Rashin Trubati, Seme Rabdu, Semale Rabdu Mataware, Seme Tungumedose, that Seme Mamibi Sigara. Tende kasere. Tata yanda nyeto na kyawa rabdo madrachers. Rangshin trube kyawa te ta yanda la tende ribe trub tu yo mare. Ane ta sheba tata sede ta yanda la soba tende sigora. Tata yanda wa nyeto na de tanye be cheme yanda nyeto sede chema le sigore. Tanye be chema ke trub mare. Yanda ba se tenda ba trub tende keshke mara. Ngone tane ngone chulia ene tanyebe chamake tokumare set yanda nidona kyam rabdo madrasis tanda batuba ngone tube kyawate tanda yo mare se ripale tane tokumare ene kasere tanyebe shibe sitawa sinde shembate de yo mare ote songa ngone tube kuyo mare shedwa Narje bada, henchi ke kyume se kyusense. Tendo kyume to se rangone trube kyume to se. Tene. Tada yanda nyeto na kyo rabdu truba yese. yang da tang si go ra. Da tang si ti le cha ne ju me ra. Da tang yang da ni tu na kyo ha ra tu cha che ra. Tang ye tu kyo wa de ra tu ma tra ba chi. Tang tang ba kyo wa de ma tra. Rang xin ji zhui bian zhe bu da tang xin ji da de da rang zhe du da yang da xie di ya se le. Yang da ba ni tu na de tang ye be chen ma shi yang da ni tu se tang ye be chen ma ya. Tang ye be chen me ene tuan dang ba tuan dang be chen ma ni ge ra tu ma tra. Tang ye be chen ma da tuan dang ba tuan dang to be chen ma ni ga le ma tra be xie su de. Dang ba tu ba chi ga da. Oh, ji song da. Kyun de rang xin ji zhu ba dan ji shi ba do ya. Kyun ji do. Ngar ji ba da hen ji ge kan ya rang me ne zhu be zhu ma re. Tuan de zhu me do ji song da rang me ne zhu be zhu me do xie. Da dang se da yang da dang. Tang ye be tuan dang ba ne lu to be chen ma kan ge jiang. Ene dang ba zhu be jiao wa de rang me ne zhu be jiao wa de ma tra ba de es. Ne lu to be rang me ne zhu be jiao wa ju na tuan dam si ba pa ba nyam sa shi si gu ra. Dia si ge ma ra. Ne da yang da ri be zhu ji le de ne zhu be yu na de zhu be yu ma ra. O ji song da. Rang me ne zhu be yu ma re shi. O ji chi la ma.
So, verse number 47. So verse number 46, therefore, the conclusions is that a Madhyamiga philosopher is able to maintain, or practitioner is able to maintain a kind of a notion of causality that is free from both eternalism and nihilism, free from both existence and non-existence. So that is important to keep in mind. The causality is not destroyed. A causality that is free from both extremes. Both the extremes is maintained in the process of exploring what ultimate reality is, or in the process of exploring what emptiness is. Now, verse number 47 is basically negation of intrinsic existence or true existence of both cause and effect, and therefore the causal mechanism. So earlier they said, oh, but causality is still valid, right? But so therefore it is valid in the conventional sense, but from the ultimate point of view or ultimate reality, both cause and effect does not inherently exist. So this is basically the gist of verse number 47. And how this is done, a cause that occurs before its effect, or simultaneously, is not really a cause at all. So basically what he's saying is that in the ultimate sense, if there is a cause that arises prior to the effect, it is not a kind of cause in the intrinsic true sense. And if the cause and effect are simultaneously existent, it is also not a cause in the true sense. So therefore, in the ultimate analysis, from the ultimate point of view, there is no cause, because these two are not cause in the ultimate sense at all. And then with regard to the arising or the effect, right? Both and so the Tibetan and the English translation kind of differs here, the way Geshe explains it. So the Tibetan is Ta and Yang Da. So what basically it is meant, Geshe is explaining is that then from the point of view of pramana that realizes conventionality, or valid cognition of conventional reality, as well as from the pramana realizing ultimate reality. If you analyze from both of these kind of epistemological stands, both pramanas, there is no truly intrinsically existent arising as well. So therefore, if something truly intrinsically exists, there must be a kind of corresponding epistemological state, a kind of pramana state, and that pramana is kind of restricted to two: a pramana that kind of realizes conventional reality and pramana that realizes ultimate reality. And so if you kind of look from both these kind of pramanas or valid cognition, then there is no intrinsically existent birth or arising. And so therefore there is no intrinsically existent birth or arising.
Oh yeah. Tanda Tatan said Rebecca said to Yandan Yituna said Tanya Chama Tandam to Chama Kangaja. Oh, Tandabakua, the Matabichu said it was.
Oh, so I made a little mistake. So the first is basically ta is basically there is a mistake in the spelling of the root text, but is kind of clear in the commentary. Ta is basically when analyzed through inference or inferential logic, and also through the two sets of pramanas. That is basically the valid cognition pertaining to conventionality and a valid cognition pertaining to ultimate reality. We don't see intrinsically existent arising. So therefore, that is to basically establish the lack of inherent existence or truly existing cause and effect.
Oh, the Tata said, Dawata Bagin, Jabanalati, Tata Kusan Tata Dua, or Tichilas.
So the root verse Pauta Kastak in Tibetan could be a spelling mistake, because in the commentary by Chandrakirti, he has rather takasatak, which is basically kind of logic of inference. So when analyzed from the point of view of from logical inference, as well as from like 2 points of pramanas, conventionality, and ultimate reality, we don't see ultimate arising at all. And so if there is ultimate effect or ultimate arising, then a yogi in a state of meditative absorption through the yogic direct perception should be able to see inherently existent arising or effect, and that is not the case.
Oh yeah, don't do so. Good.
So we came, our time is up, and we're going to end our session here for today.
Thank you again, Rinpoche, for your very beautiful teachings, and thank you, Dr. Buchung, for your very clear translation today. Since Dr. Buchung is only with us for 3 weeks, you'll find information in the chat box of how you can make an offering of thanks for his translations. Please join us again next Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific time, and we'll finish with some dedications now.
May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Lobsang's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Iram Gururana Mandalakam Niryatayami. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha. that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
No, sir. Oh, it is.
Recording stop.